Welcome, listeners, to www.IronRadio.org, the website and podcast for all things strength sports and sports nutrition. With your hosts, Lonnie Lowry.
Remember, Phil is like a gnarled old oak tree held together with scar tissue and bone spurs.
Rob Fortney.
And I'm telling you, the pain that I would suffer was beyond excruciating.
And Phil Stevens.
Do it, Rob. You'll kill all those nerves.
Thanks for listening.
Good morning, everybody. Go to strengthguild.com, strengthguild.com. Scroll down to the Iron Radio collections, and we've got new shirts and new banners for you to support the show. Everything from just a regular banner, regular shirt, to ones with sayings on them, like Lonnie's Phil is like a gnarled old oak tree shirt. And some news for you, we're going to have some contests for people who own these shirts and things. So if you support the show, we'll let you more on that later. So if you get in on these early, you can be one of the first people to win some prizes. So thank you very much. Go check out the site, strengthguild.com. Scroll down to Iron Radio Collections and support the show.
Welcome, Iron Radio listeners. This is Lonnie Lowry. I'm an exercise physiology and nutrition professor of about 20 years, and I'm a former competitive bodybuilder.
Hey, this is Dr. Mike T. Nelson, associate professor at the Carrick Institute, creator of the Flex Diet Cert, and out here snowboarding in Montana.
Nice.
Hello. This is Dr. Trisha VanDusseldorp. I'm an assistant professor of exercise science at Kennesaw State University and the current ISSN president.
Nice.
Yay.
All right.
Yeah. Hey.
Madam President, we will get to you in just a moment. I wanted to follow up on something from last week, everybody, on these vegetable burgers that are now all the rage, and Mike and I had on our old man, driver caps, old man hats, and talking about, this has been tried before in some ways, but now there's a lot of interest. I mean, constant buzz through the IFT and that sort of thing. So this is from healthline.com.
Strength and muscle sport news.
Some claim that the Impossible Burger is more nutritious and environmentally friendly than beef-based burgers. Others argue that certain ingredients in the Impossible Burger may not be optimal for your health. So this is just what we were talking about last week. Because, Mike, you were talking about, you were curious what kind of oils they would use. And,
yeah.
And I was worried about the protein source. And so it says the original Impossible Burger contained the following ingredients: water, textured wheat protein, wow. Coconut oil, and potato protein. Okay, so creative, I guess. In 2019, the company introduced a new recipe with the following changes. Now it uses soy protein instead of wheat, making it gluten-free. It contains plant-based culinary binder called methyl cellulose, and I've talked about that sort of thing before. I don't want to touch that one today, and then they replaced a portion of the coconut oil with sunflower oil. And that's kind of what you were going to guess, Mike, I think.
Yep.
Also, they use soy leg hemoglobin. It's a particular type of hemoglobin, which, of course, makes it look like, it's bleeding and it's got that taste. It says, unlike the heme found in beef, the heme in the Impossible Burger is genetically engineered by adding soy protein to genetically engineered yeast. Okay. Now, it says it does have GRAS status, so it's generally recognized as safe, this special hemoglobin, by the FDA, but some have concerns about its health effects, and that's partly because there's only been short-term animal studies with it, apparently. But it does seem to make iron more bioavailable in the way that regular heme would in beef. So not only flavor, but maybe enhancing the iron absorption as well. Here is the rundown. They're comparing it to a 90% lean beef burger. The Impossible Burger has more fat, 14 grams of fat instead of 13 grams in the beef burger. The Impossible Burger has carbs, probably not surprisingly, but 9 grams of carbohydrates instead of course, none in beef. So I guess if you're keto-oriented, you might have to keep at least an eye on it. Protein is less, so 19 grams of protein in the Impossible Burger versus 29 grams in the equivalent beef burger. And, of course, that 19 grams, like we were saying last time, maybe missing the odd indispensable amino acid and that sort of thing. But also just less in total. Sodium, 16% of the daily value in the Impossible Burger versus just 1% for the beef. So that's the sort of we were talking about, right? The processing and that sort of thing. No selenium in the Impossible Burger, whereas you get 36% of the daily value in beef. So she summarizes by saying Impossible Burgers are significantly lower in protein than beef-based burgers, yet they contain some fiber. They do have 3 grams of fiber. Now, I guess I would argue nobody's eating a beef patty looking for fiber, but
Yeah. A whole 3 grams.
right.
I agree.
So there's that. It says claims that producing this plant-based burger uses roughly 75% water, less water, generates 87% fewer greenhouse gases compared to livestock, and requires 95% less land than producing conventional ground beef from cows. She doesn't specifically refute anything along those lines. Mike, you and I were talking about in recent months, about rotating crops and about how, when it comes to topsoil erosion, there's a couple of different things where you can't just say all livestock is all bad all the time. But anyway, so that's what at least their website shows. Again, the big controversy she seems to think is that modified form of hemoglobin that's only had research done in short-term animal studies. So I just wanted to offer that breakdown to everybody. It does look like if you're a vegan, it will help you absorb some iron, which could be a problem for you otherwise. So Mike and I rambled about this last week. Trisha, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think the sustainability piece is attractive in the current state of the world. But I think if you're going for a hamburger, you should go for the real deal, the real deal, and get the high quality protein for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mike, did that surprise you at all? I don't think it would. That's pretty much what you said last week. So,
yeah, that's pretty much what we thought. And again, similar to what we touched on last week, I'd be super interested to see how many people are picking the Impossible Burger because of ethical reasons or because they believe that it's healthier and better for the environment. I'd be super fascinated to see if they ever have any data on that, because if they're arguing that it's healthier, debatable.
And that was my gripe. I think that people, maybe this is an assumption on my behalf, but that people are going to choose this because plants equal healthy. End of story.
Oh yeah,
right.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. I think a lot of people are becoming really attracted to plant-based diets and picking foods based on ethical reasons. So I think a lot of people will say, oh, it's got to be healthier if it's plant-based.
Right.
Is that necessarily the case?
Mm-hmm. I'll continue digging in my copious free time, sure. But I'll continue digging and look at maybe like what the National Cattlemen's Beef Association has to say about sustainability. Because there are counter arguments to some of these sustainability pieces. Again, Dr. Amerson here, she just pointed to the environmental data from the Impossible Burger website. So, of course, that could be slightly cherry-picked and whatnot. So,
And that also depends. Are you equating that to kind of factory farming like we touched on last week? Or if you look at sustainable raised beef by, smaller farmers, that's a completely different thing altogether. So it's like, what are you comparing it against to?
That's a good point. Exactly. Right. So you can present partial truths, and almost end up lying by omission, kind of. Yeah.
Right.
And you know what? I'm not super against this. It's just that I don't want people, and I don't think a lot of our listeners are going to shy away from beef. I mean, Phil has no interest in this, so maybe I'm just waving a red flag for something that nobody is really going to care about anyway. But I mean, God, wheat and soy as the protein sources. Oh boy, I mean, just when you think about like the DIAS or the PDCAAS, those scales, those are not as good. Anyway.
Yeah, at least soy is better than wheat, so that's a positive progression, maybe.
Sure, I guess. What's funny about this is Dr. V, I don't know if this was the case with you, but when I was a kid, we used to mock the soy burgers in high school and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they'd serve up these really kind of bogus burgers. You're like, that's not a hamburger. And it's like, now it's cool? I guess now it's cool. I don't know. I get it that the special hemoglobin is a big like flavor enhancer, and it is interesting that it can help with iron absorption the same way as real heme does. But yeah, and so maybe for vegans it might be healthier. Let's make that caveat. But otherwise, yeah, I'm not real stoked. I just processed and anyway. So I don't know. Maybe they'll listen to this. I doubt it. We have a niche market. And then we'll get a nasty call from a lawyer. So fine, come on the show and correct us. Correct the 3 PhDs, please.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get to you, Dr. V. I can tell you, my students like you already. I didn't tell you this.
You have great students. Oh my goodness, Lonnie. Every time they email me, about posters or ISSN stuff, they're always so respectful and enthusiastic and organized. They've already got their poster in, abstract in and stuff for ISSN this summer. And yeah, you guys are always on top of it. So kudos to you. I think that's a lot of your mentorship.
Well, thank you. I do. I think they appreciate that they look at you as younger and cooler than me. so that's actually
well, I don't know if they're wrong then.
So let's talk about you and how you got into fitness, academics, what you're into now, just all of the above.
Yeah. Let's see. That's a great question. I really enjoy reflecting on this stuff. I grew up in a really small town. Well, I shouldn't say really small. I guess it's all relative to perhaps where you guys grew up and the listeners, but 10,000 people-ish, few stoplights, few stop signs, where everyone knows everybody. So I grew up in Iowa, a small town called Oskaloosa. And really my love for fitness and sport began when I was really young. And that's thanks to my parents. They signed me up for, my first sport was t-ball. I'd say if you ask my dad what my first, experience in sport was, he'd say it would be in racing because he races dirt track cars. And the first race I ever went to, he won when I was a kid. So he always says, your introduction to sport really was because, I took you to the racetrack. But I was in t-ball about 6 years old. And I remember as a kid, I'd go outside. We had this massive yard in the country, and I would set the tee up and I would just hit ball after ball after ball off of that tee and play catch with my dad. They signed me up for basketball. I played at the local YMCA. I was in swim lessons. Bless my parents. They really made it possible. They were driving me all around as a kid. I was in cheerleading, soccer, volleyball, and I loved it all. So as soon as school was out, I was ready to, go to practice and compete. I still wish I had that energy today. As I got older, I continued to play sports. I ran track, played basketball and softball through middle school and high school. I also played on a lot of traveling teams. I had some really good coaches at Oskaloosa that were involved in AAU communities and traveling communities. So I would go to tryouts, and my dad would work all week. I'd play high school sports, and then we'd hop in the car and drive over a state, and I'd play in a tournament, a basketball tournament or a softball tournament. And then we'd drive back on Sunday, and I'd go to school on Monday. I remember in high school once I went to prom and then hopped in the car as soon as it was done. We drove all night to Kansas City, Missouri, and then I played in a basketball tournament. And I had my nails done. I was out there on the court, and I go to catch the ball, nice. And it breaks off one of my nails. So, my parents were super supportive and really introduced me to sport. I ended up playing college basketball at a Division II school for a few years. Southwest Minnesota State. I went there to originally pursue a degree in elementary education, and I really liked Southwest because they allowed the students to student teach within their first semester. So you could figure out, hey, is this something I actually want to do? And I did that. And I realized, I don't know about these elementary ed students. They're running around, picking on each other, picking their nose. They're just like, running around. I love kids, but I don't know if this is necessarily for me. So I started exploring some other career opportunities. I switched to pre-med and was like, maybe I want to be a dermatologist or a pediatrician. I don't know. And it was an interesting balance because Southwest was a small Division II school, and the labs were only on Fridays. Your biology labs were on Fridays, your chemistry labs were on Fridays, and the basketball team played back-to-back. So we would travel Thursday, play Friday and Saturday, and then come back Sunday. So I would always miss my lab. So I had this battle of doing well in my classes, because if you missed 2 labs, you automatically were failed. You got an F in the class. So I couldn't pursue pre-med and play basketball. So finally I decided, I'm going to focus on my academics, and I actually stopped playing and decided to really hone in on what I wanted to do and focus on my coursework. And that's when I took a kinesiology class with Brent Jeffers. He was actually he was not a PhD, had a master's degree, taught with a chalkboard and bones, taught kinesiology and biomechanics, and he was incredibly dynamic. Students loved him. He would hop on the table and teach, and people were engaged. The students were engaged the entire time. And I thought to myself during one of the classes, like, how do you do that? How do you become a college professor? I had no clue. I just would sit in these classes and study and try to work hard and learn and get an A and whatnot. And I didn't really realize that was a career opportunity and something I could do. So I met with him and said, hey, I want to potentially be a college professor. How do you go about that? And he explained to me, you have to do a master's and a PhD. These days, he said, you can't really get a faculty position with just a master's degree anymore, unless you just want to kind of pursue a lecturer position, which is a great position as well. So I was like, okay, I'm on board. How do I start? How do I get some experience doing this? So he told me, if you get an A in kinesiology and biomechanics, you can TA for those courses during your last semester. And I did that. So I ended up graduating early. I took 24 credits in my last semester and TA'd kinesiology and biomechanics, and did my first research project that semester as well. I had some more time because I wasn't playing basketball. There was another professor, super influential in my life, Dr. Jeff Bell. He did his PhD at Pittsburgh and came to Southwest and had a lot of research experience. So we ended up doing a training study in wheelchair athletes, the wheelchair basketball team at Southwest. Really great team. That was my first research experience, and I was able to present that at the Southwest symposium. Totally fell in love with research, got all my applications in, really was kind of battling between, do I want to do biomechanics or exercise physiology? I liked both. Chose to go to the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse and chose human performance and applied sports science, because part of me still was kind of like, I kind of like the, really more applied side. Maybe I want to go into strength and conditioning and coach women's sports. I wasn't so set on a PhD at that point, but I was definitely leaning more towards that direction. So went to the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. I was a TA. I taught anatomy and phys labs, cadaver-based labs. So my office was right next to the cadavers, and I assisted with ex-phys labs, worked in the lab under Dr. Glenn Wright, who was an incredible mentor as well. completed a thesis, worked on developing a running Wingate test on a non-motorized treadmill. So that was really, really fun. And I also returned to playing basketball. So I had a year of eligibility, and I played my last year at the University of Wisconsin lacrosse. Really, really had a great experience there. And during that time as well, I really started getting more into the fitness community. As I look back, in the sports nutrition community as well. When I was in high school, I didn't know anything about nutrition. I would eat carbohydrates and actually use caffeine for track and field events. I had a pre-workout that I used. But when I got to, and even when I was in undergrad doing my bachelor's, I really didn't know a whole lot about the nutrition side, and really was just focused on sport. But when I was in lacrosse, I started getting more into the fitness community, more into the resistance training world. I started running some marathons, bought a road bike, got into cycling, and really started nerding out on the nutrition side and the performance kind of general fitness avenue. Once I finished in lacrosse, I went to the University of New Mexico. So I left the Midwest, which was a big decision for me because all of my family is still in the Midwest, and went to Albuquerque. Yeah, and I had an incredible experience in New Mexico. It is just such a wonderful place. Albuquerque is incredible because it not only my experience doing my PhD there was great, but Albuquerque, the city, is awesome. You have the valley where it can be sunny and really, really warm, and you can go up into the mountains and it's cool, and there's hiking and mountain biking, and you can even ski. I mean, it was really an eye-opening experience for me to have all of that, right there outside my door, as well as incredible mentors. So I went to New Mexico, and I originally worked with Dr. Chad Kirksick. He was there my first year and a half, 2 years. He ended up taking another job at Lindenwood, which you both probably know. But he was, incredible, getting me into the sports nutrition world, helping me make connections. He was the first one to introduce me to the ISSN. I ended up finishing out with Dr. Christine Mermier, which not a lot of people know about, but she's an incredible mentor. She's done a lot of different research from, rock climbing, performance. She does nutrition research. She's really, 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 really great clinical research. And she was who I finished out under. But at New Mexico, the really great thing about their program, and I'm actually sending a student there because I love it so much, is that they allow you to do research in a lot of different areas. So we did altitude research. I have experience in biochemistry. I did nutrition and supplementation research. We did some aging and diabetes research. It was just an incredible experience. Finished there in 2016 and took the job at Kennesaw State. It was actually the first place I interviewed. I interviewed some other places, but KSU was incredible. The job posting was very sparse in details, and I ended up submitting my application like the last day, the deadline. I was like, I don't know much about the school and whatnot, but I'll send an application in. And when I came to interview, absolutely incredible, great people, incredible lab space and support from the department and the dean and the university as a whole is really a special place. So I've been here ever since.
Right on. So you didn't really get that introduced into the resistance training seriously till grad school, is that right?
Yeah, I just, we would lift weights in high school and whatnot, but it was really such an afterthought for the coaches, it seemed, right? It was just something you did for 15 minutes after practice. And I look back and it's like, I have all of this knowledge now, and all I want to do is share it with all of these high school kids and these college kids. And it's interesting when I teach sports nutrition to our undergrads here, and even some of our grad students still compete at KSU, depending on eligibility, they have no clue. It's like you should, we've got runners, 800, 1500 meter runners that, don't know anything about supplements or things that could be ergogenic and improve their performance, or even, recovery with protein and stuff like that. So it's very, very interesting.
Yeah, it almost sets you up like a missionary, to these programs where the head coach just handles all of the, the lifting, the nutrition, the whatever, and you're just kind of like, oh man, there's so much opportunity here just to shed some light, on all this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just recently gave a talk to the cross country team. There was a girl that was in my grad class, and she was still running and for the cross country, the KSU cross country team. And she's like, Dr. V, you have to talk to the team. Please talk to the team, because we don't focus on this stuff. And people have, GI distress, and they talk about all these things, but they don't know who to go to. So we set up a time, and I talked to them, and I told the coach, and hey, anytime your players want to send an email and chat, I'm happy to do it, because I think it's great for them to have just, a 15-minute conversation could really change a lot of things for them.
All right. We will go to break, and when we come back, everybody, we're going to talk with Dr. V about just memberships. Like, if you're a lifter and you love learning, where do you go? What kind of certifications or memberships are out there? What kind of opportunities to network? Just all of the above. So we'll be back in just a minute.
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, you know who this is. So I'm here to tell you about Dr. Mike T. Nelson's new book, Why You Should Eat Keto. I don't do it because, look at me. Come on, I'm fabulous and I'm fantastic. Anyway, you should text the Keto ebook, all in one word, to 44222 to receive your free copy. Do it now!
Iron Radio is, of course, primarily a podcast. But over the years, there have been technical glitches calling for backup streaming and listeners who wanted the convenience of other sources of audio content. Toward this end, Iron Radio is now simulcast and backed up on YouTube. If needed, please search Lawnman07 or Iron Radio from within YouTube. There's not much video, but if you like to listen through YouTube on a Roku or other living room device, there you go. Okay, listeners, after more than a decade of joining us on the podcast airwaves, you can now also become viewers on YouTube. This is not our usual simple backup of the audio show, but rather a growing body of video taste tests covering various foods of interest to nutrition enthusiasts, bodybuilders, and powerlifters. From within YouTube, simply search for Iron Radio Taste Test or Nutrition Radio Taste Test. In about 15 minutes, we cover taste and texture similar to other products, usefulness to the co-hosts, and whether we would recommend the product to certain clients. You may even want to watch our podcast feed or Facebook group for which products are coming down the pike so you can taste test them with us. Join us for this new monthly project.
Weekly fix of Iron Radio. In addition to being a popular institute on iTunes, we are also on email. Simply go to www.ironradio.org and sign up for the voluntary email. You'll get a once per week email, no more. That's little more than the show notes and a link to the audio. So go for it.
All right, everybody, we're back. It's Mike and it's Lonnie. Phil is away at a powerlifting meet, and we have Dr. Trisha VanDusseldorp, and she is going to just shed some light on ways to get involved, I think, as a lifter. I think a lot of us are familiar with the good old boys or girls network at your local gym, and you kind of share knowledge and that sort of stuff. But when you want to broaden your horizons, you might want to think about professional memberships, but at the same time, you might be a little bit hesitant. It's going to be boring, and I don't care about this stuff. I can barely stand listening to Lonnie and Mike ramble on. So what might people look for? Like, what if they're interested in joining a larger community, what suggestions might you have?
Yeah, I think my top two for the lifting and resistance training community would be the NSCA, so the National Strength and Conditioning Association, and then of course I might be a little biased here, right? But the ISSN, the International Society of Sports Nutrition, and because I have the most experience with the ISSN, I'll start there. The ISSN is, it's really special to me. My first trip to that conference, like I mentioned earlier, Dr. Chad Kirksick told me about the ISSN. Interestingly, I knew about the NSCA when I was working on my master's. I knew about ACSM during that time too, but I didn't know about ISSN, and I think a lot of people don't know about ISSN because it's a smaller organization, not as large as NSCA and in the American College of Sports Medicine, ACSM, but it's a really, really, really great place for individuals who are not only academic, but in the practical side, and are, resistance training, interested in muscle hypertrophy and protein. So it's not always about just nutrition and supplementation, but there's an applied aspect too. Most of the major conferences, so we consider that the annual conference, have both a practical and applied section, so things that would apply very much to a resistance training athlete, and then a very basic physiology section as well. So two talks going on at the same time, one more practical and applied and one more basic. And I think it would really, really appeal to the lifting community, not only the information that you're getting, the scientific talks, but the community. The ISSN is such a great place to network, and that is my favorite thing about the conference. The people are more than willing to sit down and have a conversation with you. You just can walk right up to them and chat with them. It's casual. It's a place where you can really get to know a lot of people. And if there's someone in particular, you might listen to on a podcast and stuff, and they're there, you just walk right up to them and say hi, and they're more than willing to chat with you. So the ISSN is a really great place. There are conferences that are affordable. I don't think they're outrageous in cost. The 18th annual conference and expo is already planned out. We just put the schedule out. It's in St. Petersburg in person, June 10th to 12th. So we're really pumped to get some people together since we've been virtual so much lately. We also have been doing some virtual conferences and webinars. They usually garner about 150 people from all over the world and have very practical talks for resistance training athletes. We actually have a female-specific one that Eric Bastillo, who's the vice president, he's an RD, really great guy. He just organized a female health and performance webinar, and it will focus, there are talks that will focus on resistance training in women and supplementation for hypertrophy in women. It's going to be a really great event.
That's really cool.
So that's, the ISSN is excellent. NSCA, I have to say the same thing, is a great organization as well. I'm a member of the Georgia State Board. Greg Ryan, who's from Georgia Southern, is the president of our region, and he's done a really excellent job. I know there's going to be a lot of structure changes on how those kind of regional conferences work, but they're super affordable. And you get a day long of talks, and they're recorded. So let's say, hey, this conference is going to cut into your training time. They're recorded, and you can listen to them later, and it's excellent. A lot of applied information for resistance training athletes.
Right. Yeah, definitely. As far as certifications and whatnot. I mean, the NSCA, would you recommend people start with like a CPT kind of thing and just go personal trainer focused? Do they go right for the CSCS? What's the structure like these days?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think if you're looking for more of a personal training job, less athletic specific coaching, then the NSCA CPT is a great certification. The CSCS, I have the CSCS. I think it's excellent. It actually, you can personal train with the CSCS as well. It's accepted at a lot of gyms and by a lot of different organizations. But definitely is more specific to athletic performance. So if you're more interested in athletic performance, the CSCS is great. Interestingly, the NSCA, I don't know if you guys know this, but they came out with the Certified Performance and Sports Scientist certification. Did you guys know that?
Yeah, I've been hearing about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard a little bit about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. The requirements are a little bit different. So you actually have to have a doctorate or a master's degree, or if you have a bachelor's degree and 3 years of experience, and they put out the specifics on experience, whether it's research related or training sport and tactical athletes or sport-based teams. That seems like a really interesting a certification that could apply both to training, but also kind of highlight your ability to talk about evidence-based practice and digest scientific papers. Right. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. I just think it's such a natural connection. It's no wonder there's so much networking between the NSCA and the ISSN, right? A lot of the same people are equally fascinated with weight training and how nutrition supports it. So it's just a natural, yin and yang, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it is. It is. And the ISSN offers certifications too. The most popular one is the ISSN CISSN. And that Certified Sports Nutrition Specialist certification is great. It really kind of highlights that you have a good knowledge of individual supplements, beta-alanine, creatine, citrulline, and so on and so forth, and recommendations for protein. So having that certification, which is affordable, I should say, in a sense that if you attend a regional conference that might cost a student $40, you get a 50 to 75% discount on the certification exam. So you can make it super affordable to get that certification, and it really shows your ability to digest sports nutrition information and talk about it and really potentially helps some athletes in that area.
Right. In some ways, it's reminiscent of what you were saying about the doctoral level NSCA stuff that's coming on the pike. Just being able to converse, about breaking science, to read scientific papers and understand them, which is no easy task for someone who doesn't have a graduate education, and stuff like that. Let me ask you, though, Mike, what's your experience with NSCA versus ISSN? Or I know you're part of different neurological groups and things like that. What would you suggest for listeners? I mean, they know that you love strength and lifting and all that sort of thing, and they would listen to your advice for sure. But you're also involved at a very high end with stuff. What do you think, Mike?
I mean, just to kind of echo what you guys were saying, go to a conference. Obviously, I've been to a lot of local NSCA events. I think that's a great way to start. Because it's super easy to meet people. It's less travel once you can actually attend events in person again. The bigger events, the national event, which I presented at, they're super cool to see a lot of different speakers. But I think sometimes the networking is harder because the events tend to be so massive. They're still wonderful events. Like what Trisha was saying, I like the ISSN because it's generally relatively small. Pretty much everybody there is very open. And I think just the dynamics are easier to meet people than some of the bigger events. So I would say start with whatever you can attend locally, obviously once events are open. And then I think even the ISSN National Conference, which sounds kind of intimidating, is still relatively small, which is nice. Like Trish was saying, there's 2 different tracks, so you can watch the more academic kind of nerdy stuff. You can still watch the more practical stuff. And yeah, so I think once you can go to events, getting out and going to events, there just isn't anything you can replace with that. And I'm sure you can attest to this too, Lonnie, the amount of just people that you've met and just conversations you've had. And, one other tip I could give too is that if there's someone there you're really interested in meeting, if you can even just brush up on what research they've done, things that they're interested in, that's always nice too, because then they realize, oh, wow, you actually kind of know what you're talking about, and you have maybe a question that's an intelligent question to ask. And pretty much everybody wants to talk about their research, especially if they meet someone who's interested in it and has taken the time to actually read it. So
yeah, I think it's really notable with the ISSN how they embrace non-PhDs in a way. Like, Mike, imagine going to somewhere like IUNS or one of these big international meetings, or even like experimental biology. Yeah, there's 20,000 people, and I don't think there's a lot of lay lifters there just trying to pick up some new skills, kind of thing. So.
Yeah, and that's what I do like about ISSN is exactly that. You don't have to have a terminal degree to go there. There's a lot of practical-based applications, and there's people that I've met there that are not even in the fitness or nutrition industry. They're just, fans of it and interested, and they can still get a lot out of it too.
Yeah, I mean, it's legitimate to be a science consumer. I have huge respect for people like that. Definitely. Trisha, you mentioned online and live. I just wanted to say one thing that I just valued so much is that of all the conferences, usually there's about 4 on my annual schedule that I'm looking at. I don't travel as much as Mike, but I've got my eye on about 4 at a time. ISSN was the one, thank God, that was live this time. I know people have different opinions about face-to-face right now as we're kind of slowly starting to emerge from the pandemic, hopefully, knock on wood. But
yeah, we're very much looking forward to it and feel like we can do it in a safe manner. As Mike mentioned, it's not 20,000 people. You're talking 150 people. And we've already got, Joey's been working, Dr. Antonio, the CEO of ISSN, has been working really hard on making sure that, there's adequate spacing in the tables and people will feel comfortable. Masking will be, I think, optional at that time. By the time we get there, at least for the hotel from our last correspondence with them. So I think it's going to be really great, and I have a feeling it's going to have a lot of energy because people have been in the virtual setting for so long. Yes. So I'm really very much looking forward to it. And I know travel budgets are really tight. So I've been, especially for students, I really want to get students involved, and so I've been trying to correspond with different students, and it goes for your guys' connections as well, and Lonnie, your students, getting them hotel rooms where they can be together and kind of potting in a safe manner and whatnot, so they don't have to spend as much money, because I know travel is really tight right now.
Right on. Yeah, my one rule is that everybody who travels is vaccinated, because by then I think that's possible. Half of our group already is, because we're not piling into planes. We're gonna road trip it. But if everybody's vaccinated and testing negative, so I think universities are starting to emerge. And you're right, the energy is going to be high. I can tell you, because last year was generally, at least on a personal adventure level, unsatisfying. I was shackled to my keyboard for 8 hours, for some of these meetings and stuff, and it's just not the same. It's not. Okay. What about just overall tips that you might have then? I mean, if someone likes education, this is kind of putting you on the spot, but other than like trying to seek a certification or a membership or something local, does ISSN, for example, have things online, like resources that people can just start to geek out? Where would people look? If they wanted to up their game academically,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have less of that available. NSCA and ACSM, we haven't talked as much about ACSM, but they put out a lot of content. The American College of Sports Medicine, not as always specific to the resistance training world, but a little bit more clinical at times. They got the ACSM certified exercise physiologist and certified clinical exercise physiologist certifications from from that to personal training and group exercise. They even have a certified cancer exercise trainer and public health specialist certification. They have so many certifications, and they put out content and continuing education information associated with that. So if you're looking more in the clinical world, I'd say that. But NSCA really does put out a lot of content too. They have continuing education modules as part of their website, and that's not only specific to strength and conditioning in kind of the general population, but they also have an awesome tactical strength and conditioning facilitator education portion of their website as well. So if you're looking for direct information, stuff you can learn on your own, I would check out NSCA and the American College of Sports Medicine.
Before I let you go, what's on tap for you now? Like you could research, athletics. What is Dr. V up to these days, or even down the road?
Yeah, we were really lucky when the pandemic hit kind of hard in March of, I guess it was, March of last year, huh? Already, it's crazy. That we had two really big studies going on that were grant funded, and we were right at the end. And one of them was more led by me, but another one of them was led by one of my students, Alyssa Bailey, who is going to likely go on for her PhD. I'd mentioned that earlier, but we were right at the end, and I sat down with our department chair and chatted with the Office of Research, and we found a way to safely complete those projects. And we've actually continued in the lab with social distancing and adequate cleaning. And so we haven't really missed a beat. Did things slow down? They definitely did slow down, but we've been completing projects. The one that Alyssa was spearheading is a really cool one, and we're going to use that for some upcoming large grant funding applications. But that was looking at 3 months of quercetin supplementation and the impact on bone turnover markers in postmenopausal women. So we're finishing up the writing on that, and we're going to use that as pilot data for some grants. Really, really cool study and cool results from that. Another one of my students is working on her thesis, Michaela Lessie. She'll be at ISSN this summer. Really incredible student. Love her to pieces. She is going to go in for a PhD as well. She's studying the effect of creatine loading on body composition, GI distress, and performance in women. So she's doing a female and creatine study, which a lot of research on creatine, but not so much in women. We just these studies vary a lot. So the thing I love about KSU, and one of the reasons I love to talk about the program and really enjoy the university, is that you don't have to have one set area. For example, I don't just have to study creatine, or I don't just have to study protein. I can have kind of a general nutrition as my primary research line and study a lot of different topics under that umbrella. So we just got a grant thanks to one of my non-traditional students, Brent Eukin, who I know Mike knows really well. Yeah, he is incredible. He came to me with this idea, looking at isolated effects of EPA and DHA. He's been diving into the literature. We got a grant. We're going to look at, the effects of these fish oils for 16 weeks on VO2 max and heart rate variability and muscular performance and body composition and metabolic panels. It is a massive study. We've delayed the start on that one a little bit. We're working with the company on the exact formulations and whatnot of the supplements. We want to do it right. So it's super exciting. As you can see, I've got a lot of student support. Can't do these projects without them. Another student, Ben Dalton, and I'm not the lead faculty on this one. Dr. Garrett Hester he's a great guy, did his PhD at Oklahoma State, really hones in on the neuromuscular aspect, but looking at fatigue during ramp, and rapid isometric muscular contractions. And it's actually using non-invasive brain stimulation and non-invasive nerve stimulation. So Ben, who is the student lead on that, also going to go on to do a PhD, really worked hard on piloting that, got it through the IRB, wrapping that project up in May. So a lot of cool stuff, more projects too. I could go on. Somehow I've gotten myself into this enzyme area of research. We just wrapped up a study on a supplement called Solarplast, looking at the impacts of a proprietary enzyme blend on aging and overall health. Getting ready to start another enzyme project on GI distress in individuals who have IBS and GI disorders. So that'll be a lot of survey-based questionnaires and whatnot in middle-aged individuals with IBS. And another one, proprietary enzyme as well. And I'm super excited for this one. And we were talking about, plant-based sources at the very beginning of the show, but looking at this enzyme's impact on amino acid availability when it's taken with different protein supplements, like a plant-based source, like pea protein versus whey protein and whatnot. So we've got a lot of cool stuff going on in the lab. We're still going at it in there, even though COVID hit hard and slowed us down a little bit, but we're still being productive. And that's thanks to not only good faculty and collaborators, but we have great students as well that work really, really, really hard.
I think that's great. Mike and I we've been fussing for the last year, probably 6 months at least, that almost all of what you're seeing, like the kind of news that we get and share on the show and whatnot, it's always like observational studies or some meta-analysis. It felt like the actual intervention trials were grinding to a halt, and everybody was just reviewing what's already out there,
Yeah, it's been really great, and thanks to the support of the Office of Research and allowing us to continue, and the students being super responsible in their free time, socially distanced and being safe, so that we can keep participants safe and doing adequate screening. So things have gone really well, and we were definitely kind of pushing the limit. We had some older participants in when COVID was really, really ramped up, and we were able to do it safely. So very, very happy about that.
All right. Well, good stuff. How can people reach you or ISSN, or do you want to share any kind of contact info?
Yeah, my email's widely available, so I'm always happy to correspond via email. Probably the easiest way is via social media. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and I actually just recently created a Twitter, so I've entered the world of Twitter, so I'm happy to connect on social media or via email.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great.
All right. Everybody, we will catch up with you next week. Maybe we'll have some cool stories from Phil.
Iron Radio is accepting donations. If you like what we do, the professors, the scientists, the bodybuilding show promoters, the athletes themselves in powerlifting and bodybuilding, please consider making a donation or maybe buying something from the IronRadio.org store. We also are accepting supporting members. So for $4 a month, which is frankly less than the bank sneaks out of your account in fees, you can step up and support a form of sort of public radio for the bodybuilding and powerlifting and strength community.
The Iron Radio podcast and all of the audio on ironradio.org is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, it's important to check with your physician. Also seek the help of registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and qualified exercise physiologists in order to make the progress that you need.